I have a disclaimer. I watch very few films. It's actually a confession. So, if you want a refund for a ticket, I don't think it's available, ticketing policy. So, before you start aiming your expensive footwear at me, let me quickly explain. Cinema to me is not just a passing amusement or a recreation. It stays with me long after the end credits have rolled. So I'm scared to sit through this, bad movie because it just ends up ruining my entire day. So cinema has this emotional and this intellectual impact on me. It's like a, blind date. So how did I become a filmmaker without watching like a million movies? You must be wondering. Simply by watching the best ones again and again. Watch, learn, and repeat. That's my mantra. Does anybody here like watching movies? Any movie lovers? Wow, nice. So, is there anybody who dislikes cinema? Anybody else? It's okay. It's okay. So that's the power of cinema. You may love it or you may hate it, but you cannot ignore it. Cinema is everywhere. You know, it is the most impactful and the most this amazing medium out there that influences us every single day. In fact, in India, there are more than 1,000 films that get released every single year, right? So I truly believe that cinema is the art form of this century. Why do I say that? Because it has every single art form in it. You talk about literature, you talk about music, dance, fashion. Every single art form is there in cinema. And not just art, it has science, it has history, it has culture, it has martial arts, it has fashion. Every single skill, every single creative skill known to mankind comes together into this beautiful package called cinema. And probably that's what fascinated me into becoming a filmmaker. So as a child, I was very curious about everything. From the smell of watercolor paint, to the mysteries of Saturn's ring, art and science fascinated me equally. And probably that's how I became an architect and later a, filmmaker. The first thing I learned when I entered the world of cinema is that cinema and life are interconnected. Life inspires cinema and cinema influences life. They're always sticking together like a teenage couple during break time. Holding hands, I meant. Right? So we had this professor in film school. So one day he asked the class this question: what does it take to make a film? What is that single, absolutely required thing that is necessary to make a movie? So somebody jumped in the seat and said, "Sir, money, sir. Money, sir." Professor said, "Sit down. Everybody with money cannot make a movie. Sorry, boss. Sorry." So then someone said, "Sir, good story, sir." He started laughing. Most films that come out don't have a story. Forget a good story. Good actor? No. Editing, cinematography. We threw all possibilities at him and he said no, no, and no. And when the class went absolutely quiet, he came out with this answer. That one thing that is required to make a film is this ability to infect one more person with your idea. Now this thought hit me like a BMTC bus without brakes. I mean, the ability to infect someone with your idea, how beautiful is that? Because it just does not apply only to cinema, it applies to every single thing that we do. It could be a job interview, it could be a presentation that you're making, a sales pitch. Every single time, you have to infect, you have to impress somebody with your idea. And now, I'm sure you're thinking, hey, I'm not going to be a filmmaker, I'm not a writer. Why do I need to tell stories? Sorry, all of us are storytellers. You're late for work, your boss calls you to the cabin, I'm sure you have to tell a good story, right? And everybody in the class has submitted their project report, and you are that one single person standing there who hasn't submitted the report, and the teacher is watching you with this death stare, with the spotlights on you. My pregnant cat went into labor last night on my homework. That's a story. Creativity under stress, right? So we're all storytellers. Don't tell me I'm not a storyteller. So if cinema is this most amazing medium of storytelling that was ever invented by mankind, how can we learn from cinema to tell better stories in our life, including your class excuses? So first thing is, what is a story? So this charming prince of Ayodhya, he marries a beautiful princess, and they have two beautiful kids, and they live happily ever after. Is that a story? That's a news report, NDTV news report, right? That's not a story. A story begins only when someone wants something really badly and he cannot get that, something stops him. A story begins with conflict. Have you seen the movie Martian? So this American astronaut gets stranded on Mars accidentally, and he has to survive the hostile conditions and work his way back home. A man stuck alone on a planet. Now that's conflict. So when you tell a story, you need to have a clear conflict. And your audience should believe that this conflict is worthy of resolution. So this person who solves this problem, resolves this conflict through his struggle, through his transformation, is the hero or the heroine of the story, the protagonist. So every story begins with conflict, action, and resolution. And the more interesting and unexpected your resolution is, the more the audience will get engaged in your story. Martian, how does he resolve the conflict? By growing potatoes on Mars. Alugate. Right? In Ramayana, how does Rama defeat Ravana? By raising an army of monkeys. Right? So conflict, action, and resolution. That is the structure of every single story told ever. Now you might ask me, every story has this good structure, but why do I connect only to a few? Right? Has anybody here watched Interstellar? Okay. So when Christopher Nolan, the director, approached Hans Zimmer and asked him to compose music for Interstellar, he just gave this one simple brief. This story is about a father who leaves his daughter behind and goes away without knowing if and when he's going to return. So the wormholes and the fascinating black holes, they're all great, but to me, the best thing about Interstellar is the father-daughter relationship. To me, Interstellar is one of the best love stories out there. Because if someone can imagine love as a force of nature that can transcend time and space, I mean, that's the best love story that I would have really ever watched. Next aspect of storytelling which I want to impress upon you is visual storytelling. Imagine this, you're walking through a forest and suddenly you see this big beautiful tiger with hungry eyes in front of you. And there is a board next to the tiger which says vegetarian tiger. I don't know about you, but I am not stopping to read that sign, right? My brain has already convinced me that I am Usain Bolt. I'm running for my life. I don't want to discuss the meal preferences of the tiger. I don't know if the tiger is vegetarian or if it eats vegetarians, right? So it's a survival mechanism. Our brain processes visual 60,000 times faster than text. So this is an inbuilt mechanism, and this ability is the beginning of cinema. Because what is cinema? Cinema is nothing but illusion of moving frames, moving at 24 frames every second or 24 pictures every second. And yet, the fundamental unit of cinema, the alphabet of cinema is that single image which is crafted, engineered, designed cleverly to manipulate your every thought and your every emotion. So I want to explain very quickly, for the sake of time. I'll run you through some images which will talk about the power of visual storytelling. Composition. The orientation of a character and the emptiness deliberately left in the space can talk about the state of mind. Again, the exaggerated emptiness in this frame tells us that there's some loneliness in the character's life. Harry Potter and a set of bullies. Notice the exaggerated emptiness between them, which suggests that their worlds are totally different and they can never meet. The world of magic and the world of muggles. Again, an image carefully crafted to manipulate your thought. The same character in different lighting situations could look vulnerable, crazy, or menacing. Color. Color is not just an aesthetic element. It is a very strong psychological tool. Red can be a sign of violence, a sign of power. Sign of power, again, Planet of Apes. Red can also mean sensuality, passion. Yellow can be disorienting, something unexpected, jarring, even a hint of eccentricity, madness. So the next thing I want to talk about is the usage of symbols in storytelling. There are a lot of symbols that filmmakers hide inside the layers of cinema, which are cleverly manipulated to affect your thinking. Mirrors, for instance. They're often used to suggest a contemplation, a self-reflection, a moment of truth in a character's life. A fence in the foreground suggests that Dr. Strange is trapped in his present emotional situation. An image of liberty, of hope, of a new life. If you see the movie Parasite, the director cleverly uses staircases as symbols. When the character is ascending up or descending, shows his progression of his situation in the story. One of my favorite movies, Shawshank Redemption. Anybody has seen Shawshank Redemption? Wow. So this person has spent his entire life in prison and he finally let out. He cannot let go of his past. Sorry. So he's not accidentally holding the bar of the bus. He's holding on to his past. That suggests his emotional baggage. A beautiful ad about against women's abuse. That abuse, even if you cover it, you cannot hide it. An entire story in an image. Precision parking by Volkswagen. An entire story in one single image. So images, I believe, it's the closest we have to a universal language. In any language, you know this guy means business, right? John Wick, you don't mess with him. So the last thing I want to impress upon you, which often is also the most overlooked, is perspective. For instance, the Joker is a villain in Batman, but in another movie he is also the hero. Perspective changes the narrative. Take Ramayana for example. Told pretty much from the perspective of Rama, right? A victory of good over evil. Pretty much an action thriller, right? So what if we change the perspective and tell Ramayana from the point of view of Sita? It would be an entirely different story. She got married at a very young age. She was a teenager, like most of you. So she has to go to Ayodhya, settle down there, and try to start a new life in a new country. And what happens? She's sent off to forest exile with her husband. No choice. And she's trying to adjust to forest life and learn, because there are no YouTube videos those days, right? She has to do everything practically and learn. And when she's just getting adjusted to this camping situation, she gets kidnapped. And by not an ordinary guy, a 10-headed man. I mean, how do you make eye contact with a 10-headed man? It must be exhausting, right? And 10 heads means 10 times the ego, 10 times the mansplaining. Terrible time. And this kidnapping didn't happen on some horse or some chariot or some boat. No, sir. It had to be a flying machine, zipping across the ocean without seatbelts. Seatbelts weren't invented. Flying machine was invented, but seatbelts weren't invented then. People were still tying their dhoti with knots. So when she reaches Lanka, and you would imagine that she gets a palace suite. No. She has to live in this municipal park. I don't know if there were toilets also. And she is living in this park and not realizing when her husband is going to come and rescue her. And this one fine day, this flying monkey comes across with a ring. I'm sure she wished for a pizza. Tough time. So finally this husband comes with this big army and beats up the bad guys and rescues her. And you might think that her troubles are over. No. When she reaches Ayodhya, some wise guy in the crowd happens to question her chastity. And she had to undergo this Agni Pariksha, or this test of fire, which is like the gate exam for kidnapped women of those days. So in spite of acing that exam, she didn't get admission into that university, and her husband abandons her. Guess what? She's back in the forest again. So this is a totally different story. A story of a woman's suffering, pain, her endurance, her resilience, discrimination. In fact, you could call it 50 Shades of Misogyny. A different story. And what if we retold Ramayana from Ravana's perspective? I mean, we could, right? He was a brilliant aeronautics engineer. The Elon Musk of his times. except that his ships didn't explode. He used to play the veena. I mean, even Musk can't do that. Well, he fell in love. I mean, 10 heads, 10 times the oxytocin. Happens here. All is fair in love and war. So it was a bad decision because all his 10 heads were spinning and reeling in love. He wasn't thinking straight. Yeah, he shouldn't have kidnapped her. But he took a calculated risk. Because this guy has a private island. Who could reach there? Right? And someone told me there's an army of monkeys coming. He said, monkeys? What are they going to do? Throw bananas at me? So it turned out that monkeys were pretty good at throwing big stones also. So swiping right to a married woman ended up pretty badly for Mr. Ravana. It's a totally different story, right? Right? So when you're making a presentation of your idea, get the perspective right. It should be something very personal, something that you feel and connect to. That's when your audience will really feel your idea. So I want to leave you with this thought. So the next time you are watching a movie, don't just sit there thinking about popcorn and nachos. Get into the skin of the movie. Analyze the structure, the conflict, the emotional hook, the visual storytelling. And if you start studying the cinematic storytelling, I promise you next presentation will be far more compelling. And remember, every story only begins when somebody wants something really badly. So ask yourself, what is that one thing that you badly want in your life? Find that thing, go after it. Stay infected long enough, because you never know, that little spark, that little crazy idea could be the blockbuster story of your life. Thank you very much. Thank you.